So live. So welcome guys, welcome to the stream today. So I wanted to start this series of celebrating black excellence because I think that a lot of the time the phenomenal work of black people is usually not heralded. These things are usually kept under the covers. People don't really know, when you're talking about celebrating the excellence of people who have contributed greatly to human society. At times, it seems as if black people are taking the back burner, but that's not true. And history is full of examples of black people who were massively successful and who contributed greatly to society. So I just wanted us to, talk about these people because I don't believe in pessimism. I don't believe in black pessimism. I don't believe in Afro pessimism. And I think that the stories of these people can be very motivational for us to talk about and learn that there are other black people who have done great things and we could follow in the steps as well. So today we're going to be focusing on Madam C.J. Walker. This is a woman I really do not know much about, but I have heard Chloe say her name time and time again. That I thought that she might be interesting enough for us to talk about. And if I know anything about her, she's regarded as the first African American woman, first self-made African American millionaire. Although when I checked Wikipedia, I found out that she may not have actually been the first woman. No, I think Wikipedia said the first woman, the first
Yeah.
American
So,
woman in the Guinness Book of World Records to make to be the self-made millionaire. But I think there were others before her who were not really well known. Am I correct in my
well,
analysis?
like I think the self-made part, because even today you look at like most of the like, let's be honest, most of the women that are like extremely wealthy, they got it through divorce. But I think, especially in the United States, right? Self-made, I think first female self-made millionaire, and that's like that means that white women didn't get there first. But I think, um, especially how she started. She like she was born in like 1867. She was actually the first child of her family that was born free. So all of her other brothers and sisters, or I think she had five siblings, and one other. I think no, she had five siblings, an older sister, and four brothers. And I'm pretty sure that they almost all of them were enslaved, especially of course the parents were enslaved, and so she's the first freeborn child. And so you know a child born of of a family of mostly born slaves, how does that person become the first self-made female millionaire? And the funny thing is, if you kind of go through her life, she's not even actually especially unique, because she had actually competitors of other black women in the same space as her that were also in competition with her for the market share. And so, and there was even kind of like a supposed rivalry of where she worked for another woman and she kind of took that business, like the things that she learned in that business, and then created her own business. And, I understand that, in general, like, people would like to kind of make believe that, like, focusing on, like, I think today when people they gripe on hustle culture, right? They're like, well, there are limitations, and it's like, it's all these privileged men who are promoting hard work, and only because it only benefits them. When, like, what are you going to say about her? Like, how was a child of slaves somehow selected by some weird conspiracy to become a millionaire? No one would select for that. She built that herself. And, well, not necessarily like herself, but she built it on all of the opportunities, right? So I guess, yeah, I already started with her early life. She was born in Louisiana, Delta, Louisiana, and I told you about the family. And essentially, she was orphaned at the age of 7, so she didn't even have like a like her parents died. She didn't have like a family that with all these like all that support. She lived, I think yeah, so she was born Sarah Breedlove. She moved to Mississippi at the age of 10, and she lived with, I guess, like she worked as a domestic servant. She had like or what quote from her is like, I had little or no opportunity when I started out in life, having been left an orphan and being without a mother and father since she was of 7 years of age. Um, and she only had 3 months of formal education. Like, like my grandfather, like, he ended his formal education at the age at like in eighth grade. He later on went to night school, but like, that is a trend that, especially that it seems very common at that time, of a lack of, of a formal education. And but still, that doesn't preclude, you know, like the fact that you can't actually you still have intelligence. You still can make do with what you have around you. Um, and I think, let me see. So at 14, she got married. So started out really young. She married a 22-year-old Moses
Was
McWilliams.
it legal for her to be married at 14 in the
There weren't any.
US?
I well, the state laws are radically, like, the laws are different in the states. It is actually possible in Mississippi. It was legal, but
Wow.
also statutory rape, which is what it would be called today. That's also a kind of a crime that, like, the police don't necessarily actively pursue it. They only kind of do something when maybe the parents would complain. Like, I went to school with a girl who got married at 15, and she had a baby, and we're like, whoa. And she's like, yeah, no, her parents, I don't know, like, okayed it, so it was legal. um
That's like third world shit. That's like things you would expect from some third world country. How is this happening in America? I mean, who went to
there
school that a 15-year-old got married and gave birth to a child and nobody bats an eyelid?
well, like, she only went to school for band. She only went to school like for one class, and she was kind of just like, oh no, like, my husband's cute and all that kind of stuff, and she showed her baby, but everyone was kind of weirded out. And yeah, it is kind of it is a social taboo, but I guess in some places it's just, for some people, like, teenage weddings out of out of wedlock, that does happen. So like, one of my friends, when she moved and she went to, or no, she has a cousin who, yeah, at age 16 she was married with a kid, and I think she had another on the way. But it was like in the South, where it was so prevalent for these kids to have, you know for like the underage pregnancies, is that they actually had like it in the um, a book of conduct for the school as to what the procedure is, if you, like, for maternity leave for school. And also, like, the school actually had a daycare, because it happened enough. It wasn't prevalent in my school at all, which is why it was weird for us. But yeah, there are some places where it does happen enough, where I guess it is kind of somewhat normalized. Uh, yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to Madam
Yeah,
City Walker.
let's get back to it.
Yeah.
So she got married
So
at 40. Yeah.
I have a question. So now this she was born in 1867. This
Yes.
was 2 years after the Civil War ended, 2 years after slavery ended,
Yes.
and she just missed slavery by 2 years, by the stroke of luck, by 2 years.
Yeah.
And during that time, I'm sure that discrimination would have been very, very rife. I mean, legal discrimination, not
Mhm.
just not a soft one, not a you know not just words. These were discriminations that were enshrined into law, and they were actively carried out. They were actively enforced. So, how does someone like that, who didn't have any formal education, who whose mother, who was orphaned at the age of 7, you understand, who came from families of people who were slaves and all that, how does someone like that build a business that she becomes a millionaire in that time. How does that even happen in America?
It happens a little bit at the time, right? Like you have to acknowledge where you start, and then you kept having to build opportunities for yourself. You keep having to lever that for yourself. And I mean, so I could jump ahead, but she had a so what she did was I think it was in 1912, she actually addressed the annual gathering of National Negro Business League, and she actually addressed it on the convention floor. And this is what she said. She says, "I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South. From there, I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the cook kitchen. From there, I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations. I have built my own factory on my own ground." So like that's she laid it out, right? She had to step up. She had to, she had to work her way up the ladder. And I understand that, even today, people say like, oh, the ladder's broken and blah 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 blah. But like, if she were starting out, like, like if you had like somehow a time a time machine to talk to her when she was in the cotton fields, right? um hmm? First Black millionaire. Okay. I don't know. I think also maybe they're also taking into account like inflation as well. I don't know, um, so it's you don't get everything offered to you on a silver platter immediately. You have to work your way into those opportunities, and you have to have grit. You have to find your way into those opportunities to start acting on those things. The path is never clear because anything could happen, and you have to have a level of resiliency um, to find your way and to keep going on the path. I mean, even if she never started a business, right? Like she consistently, tried to move herself into a better position, right? Like she worked her way from the fields, obviously, and then the wash tub is a promotion, and then the cook kitchen. And even if she, just kept working for the business, selling and manufacturing hair products, if she never started her own business, that's still like an improvement from the fields. And just by doing that, you're expanding your opportunities, and also improving the quality of life so that you can take advantage of opportunities. And if you're just weighing someone's life by just how they started or like where you are at this moment, as if there isn't like a clear path for you, like you have to make that yourself. You have to push through the brush and the bramble, if you actually want to find a better position for yourself. So
But can't we just say that she got lucky that she's or maybe she was special, or there's something was different about her. You understand that you know given the conditions, given the times, that most black people will not be able to do that by themselves. So what was different in our own case apart from
so
grit?
um I think still the big thing is actually being aware enough of what you like, where you can move and what you can do, like how people say like you make moves, right? And again, like she wasn't even necessarily that unique, right? Because so getting back to okay, she got married at 14, and then I think he was she got married at 14, and then she had a daughter, and I think her first husband died, and then she remarried. I think that second husband also died. And then when she
Oh, she
maybe
didn't
that's
have
another
that much luck in
conversation.
the marriage department then.
Yeah, yeah. And then she remarried. The husband lived, so it's not that much
But
of
I think they divorced. I think
yeah,
they
they
divorced in
divorced.
about 1913 or so.
But she just took his name, right? And so did her younger daughter took his name. So that's where the CJ comes from. It's Charles Joseph Walker. And so
Gotcha.
it's like, yeah. So he lived. So his name's like, um, and but he, I mean, you could say even she kept marrying up, right? Like because he worked in newspaper advertising, and so she, but then they divorced, and then her daughter adopted the name, and so in 1888 she moved to St. Louis, where she worked as a laundress, and there she, I think she learned, she was trying to make money just to get her daughter educated, right? And I think she, let me see, she learned to get educated. Here's one thing that was different about her, right? Is that she actually had like she even had a detriment to herself. Aside from everything, she actually had hair problems. She had dandruff, she had eczema, she had and it was all these issues of dealing with all these really really harsh products that were only available to Black women who were not they were not served by the community. They were just way too harsh. And there wasn't anybody really making products for Black women, and she was having issues, right? So she just suffers severe dandruff, and I think including baldness. And so she, I think, let me just see, and so I think in order to fix her issues, her brothers actually worked as barbers, right? And so she learned from her brothers. So like seeing what's around you, who's around you, right? And so like initially she's trying to solve her own issues, right? Like, how can I fix my hair, my scalp? And so she actually had a problem. And I think she eventually started working for Annie Malone, who was already working in hair care. She was a hair care entrepreneur. So like, okay, so like these are products that can actually help me. And then she worked for the business, and she learned from that business. And what she started to do is making also formulations for herself, right? And if you look at even business people today, right, successful businesses actually are solving a problem and able to recognize that there's a problem and figure out how to address it and solve it. And it like it has value. She discovered value, and even when there was someone else who was filling up that need, she figured out how to add even more value to be competitive. So she was even building on that even more.
So
And
the woman she was selling for, or the business she was selling for, that person was Black as well.
yes, that's what
Okay,
I say, there
okay.
were other
So
competitors.
she wasn't even the first in that line of business as a
No,
Black person.
she wasn't. But still, like, it's natural, like if you have a whole market that's waiting to be served, right? Like it's easy. It is easier to find success if like it's a easy niche that you can distinguish yourself in. Now today, yeah, it's probably harder. It's probably maybe slightly harder to distinguish yourself in the hair care, like Black hair care um, market. But it's interesting. I'll go back to that. But there I think there could be quite a few comparisons with that type of stuff today. If you even look at YouTube, of like how many successful Black YouTubers there are just by reviewing hair care products, um, or like beauty products, and specifically for a Black audience. Um, and so like, yeah, like I think it's also kind of debatable if she was also a millionaire as well. But yeah, yeah, my grandfather went to night school too. Yeah, I'm going to night school, um, and like because like it's very easy to like, yeah, you have a product, and then she learned from it, and she like, okay, I can improve it to make her own formulation. And so there was actually kind of a bit of a rivalry of Annie Malone accused Walker of essentially stealing the formula. And so there's like, you could get even into modern day, like, proprietary information disputes and all that kind of stuff. But so she started her own company, And so she started marketing herself as a hairdresser. So even like when I described, like all of those steps, even here you could see how she naturally is. Okay, I like once she's in a position, she could see there's potential.
So
There's even more
opportunity.
potential here. There's even more. So she starts herself as a hairdresser, and if you like, anytime you kind of go to a hairdresser, you can see they're also selling products, right? So of course she's naturally selling her own products, and then once that's kind of that gets word, word is out. So she's selling now. She's like not only doing hair, but she's selling products, and then she starts, to hire people to sell her products, right? And so she literally trained other Black women to sell products door to door. So she employed Black women, and helping them, make money as well. And it eventually got to the point where she had an international business. She was actually had saleswomen in like the Caribbean. And let me see. I'm just looking at the notes. Yeah, so she called it like she had this whole thing of like the Walker system, right? A whole range of products, which you still see today. People have a whole system of hair care. And then so, okay, you're selling people these products, but then also she created a school to teach people hair care and how to, use these products, right? And so that's even more business, right? She is now educating people. She has saleswomen and educating people how to use her products. So that's even more of an avenue in which she's going to sell even more products.
So
And
so it seemed like there was no short of entrepreneurship within the Black communities then. I mean,
no.
businesses were flourishing despite the legalized oppression and all that. Businesses were
Yeah.
flourishing, but if you want to look at if you want to look at from our standpoint currently, it might seem as if that never happened. That there was never a time where Black people flourished so strongly, so well. They did so well despite you know
Mm.
the the conditions they found themselves. Why is that so?
I I feel like it's a part of the victim mentality of because
When I'm saying this, I'm not just talking about say Black people heralding it. I'm talking about America itself. I'm talking about even other people's. How come maybe media, history
uh,
books, and all that doesn't emphasize it? Because
it's
I don't want it to just be, oh, Black people are not
yeah,
talking about
yeah.
their own
I,
success. It's
yeah,
America.
yeah, it is. I feel like it's a part of like they want to make this narrative of the working class versus like the Rockefellers, right? But like the majority of businesses in the United States are small businesses, like but even today, when people talk about like 15 hours an hour in terms of minimum wage, they're acting like all of these big companies, yeah, make them pay. No, you're going to make this mom and pop store down the street make them pay, right? So even today, entrepreneurship, I think, is less emphasized. And, like, I feel like it's a part of a narrative to make the story of, little guy versus Goliath even more potent, the narrative even more potent and contentious, as if it's clear cut, because if people can see a way for them to make, to become a millionaire with a small business, they're not going to easily narratively put themselves with, oh yeah, we're going to be against all corporations, because there's like someone who's like, well, maybe I might make a corporation one day. And because I remember, especially with the I think it was in it wasn't, I think maybe it was in, let me think, 2012, or what is it? It wasn't 2012. I think it was 2008, right? Where it was the election. I think I think it was an election. I think Bush was on the ticket, right? And there was this guy who they named him Joe the Plumber, who, yeah, he wasn't rich, right? And they're asking him, okay, you're working class, why do you support Bush, right? Why do you support, and he, like he was saying, is like, I don't support taxing the rich. I don't support all of these things. And he's like, why not? And he's like, well, I think I'm going to be rich one day. And he was mocked, at least by the, I when I was with my parents, they mostly watched media from the side of the Democrat, and he was ridiculed because it's like, oh, you're being stupid in thinking that you would have actually a chance to be rich one day. And it made it seem like, his idea of having a successful business was just ridiculous. It's all the odds are against you. All the odds are against you. But like the idea of a plumber actually being successful, it actually makes perfect sense, especially now that we have these skill shortages. I've seen plumbers talking on YouTube like, yeah, there is a way you can make a successful business. There is a way that you can get an accreditation, you can be certified, and you can work on public works issue problems. You can work on like if they're building an airport, or you can work on residential, like residential, commercial, all of these different types of licenses, and how much business that causes because you have a skill. And they completely dismissed Joe the plumber as like, well, you're just a plumber, as if that wasn't a valuable skill. And the same thing with Madam C.J. Walker. Like, she learned a skill. She had a skill to solve a problem. Why wouldn't that actually lead to success? It would be odd to see people highly skilled in something that is needed by a niche to not see success. And I feel like people are easily dismiss this value skills have, because they said like, oh, he's just a plumber, and it was just, they were treating it as if he was just a regular Joe Schmo guy working at customer service, who just was dreaming of just making up this business that had nothing to do with what he could do. And I even see this like with people who say like, oh yeah, like they would want to make a YouTube channel, right? But then I kind of like, so what can you do? Like, what is your specialty? What can you offer to the table? And they're like, movie reviews. And it's like, well, like, but still, what are you going to do different? So many people do movie reviews. You have to bring something different to it. And it's kind of like, good luck with that. Like, you actually have to have something that is desired, right? And for unpopular, there is kind of a shortage for like skilled labor, like carpenters, mechanics, plumbers, HVAC, electrician, all of these types of things, because like the amount of high school students that go into the trades I think it's like 6%. It's not very high. Most people are encouraged to go to college, but like, when you go to college, they don't teach HVAC.
So unpopular is saying, are people just becoming more lazy, or is there the problem more systemic?
I do think that the problem is systemic in a sense that people are being misguided that that these are lower level jobs. I mean, yeah, you do work with your hands, but like I just get the sense that people assume that people like plumbers make minimum wage when they don't, right? Like, if your toilet is overflowing, right, are you just going to pay someone pennies to fix it? People are going to be desperate. They're going to throw many people like, can you fix this immediately? Like, there is an opportunity there if you have skills that other people don't have, especially for something like immediate. You're going to make money. It's only when you have like a skill or a talent that's a dime a dozen that people don't even really want to pay for it. That's when you have to be worried. Like, that's why, if it's going to be contentious for like people who, like, let's say, get an art degree, right? You can get a lot of free art. Just you can just go to Instagram, you can just go like right click whatever, print out a poster. I mean, you can go to Etsy, like you can easily kind of get art because people freely display it. People kind of give it away for free, and it's one of those things you kind of have to do. You have to give it away for free because no one else is going to know the quality of your art unless they already see it, and then the cat's out of the bag, right? yeah, the high fine art scene is kind of different, and that's kind of like, like a murky tax shelter type of thing that's its own like kind of shell game. But I don't know. I feel like that there's a complete, not a complete, but there is a dismissal of, finding like understanding the value of work, understanding the value of skill, like, and what you're contributing to. And, people want to say like, okay, these jobs should be a living wage. But when I look at these jobs historically, those things are just been jobs that high schoolers do. People who are of lower skill do those things. That's why you don't pay a lot for them. Anybody can do it. And, that's just market forces,
Yeah,
like if
so
you
those are not specialized skills. Those are skills that anybody. You don't need any sort of special knowledge, special training, or technique to be able
can,
to, for example, flip burgers. Understand?
yeah.
And there are a whole lot of people who qualify to do that kind of job. So you wouldn't expect it to pay so much. But I wanted to speak to the point that you talked about. People with skills, these trades people, how it's easy for them to actually make money. For example, in my country, it's if you know what you're doing, people who have these skills, maybe the carpenters, the mechanics, the plumbers, and all that. At times, when you call them for a job, they don't even have time to come work at your place because there's somewhere, they're always busy somewhere. Today, I wanted to fix something in my car. I called the mechanic. And he said he was going to come. I called him in the morning by 7:30 when I was going to work. He said he was going to come. By 9 o'clock, he hadn't come. I could hear him walking in the background. By 10, he had to come by 1 p.m. today. And I knew his hands were very full with work, you understand? So most of the time, people look down on those kinds of operation maybe because they're not in a suit and a tie, they're not in a car with the AC and all of that. But they do make good money. They do make good money if they know what they're doing. They're very skilled, and if they know how to manage their funds,
Mhm.
they do very well.
Yeah, and like you say, like doing that type of stuff, you don't really learn that in college. And knowing how to manage customers, manage your business, again, most people don't even learn that in college. So going back to Madam C.J. Walker, the fact that she didn't have a formal education, it didn't necessarily hurt her because you wouldn't really even learn the skills that she utilized for her success at a formal education anyway. Um, people like, it's like the school of hard knocks, right? You learn through trial and error, and those who can quickly adapt and quickly learn from their circumstances tend to be more successful. People who, like can pick up skills quickly, or understand the landscape, I tend to be more successful. You don't need to know everything. I mean, even at my new job, right, I can say stuff like, I don't know all the time, I'm not sure, let me ask, whatever. But the fact that people know that I am figuring out ways of figuring out information, that makes me more valuable than someone who claims to know everything but is too stubborn to actually double check what they know and don't know. It's a skill in itself to navigate the world, to navigate all these different information and how to integrate it into what you're going to do next. And I think people, they obviously undervalue that because it just, I sometimes see these complaints of like, these things aren't guaranteed, success isn't guaranteed, or like I did everything right and things didn't work out for me. But like, if people quote unquote do everything right but mindlessly without actually adjusting their approach every single step of the way, you're just going to be like, I don't know if you've ever seen The Office, where it's like there's a scene in The Office where Michael Scott, who's like the bumbling, boss, right, and he's listening to the GPS, that it says the GPS is turned right, but the guy in the car says that's a lake, and he's like, no, the GPS said turn right, and he drives right into the lake, and he's just like, and it's like people are, it's like in like in a metaphoric, like they're driving straight into the lake. They keep doing this advice when they can, maybe if they thought about it, they can clearly see that it's not going to work out for them and they need to adjust, right? They need to adjust they need to adjust their plan. They need to, it's like, okay, maybe this is wrong. Maybe I can take my common sense and actually do something different. But some of these people, they even want to let go of even, their own responsibility, or like the effort that you have to put into to actually just make your own decisions. And people just, that's hard. And it also takes into account, like, you have to understand where you are. You can't have delusions of grandeur and then, think that, like, well, obviously I should, apply for the position of CEO because I'm great. And you just go in there and you make a fool of yourself. It's like, well, I did everything right. And it's like, you have to adjust, you have to take into account what you're lacking, what you can do. And I don't know, it's very just weird when people say, like, I did everything right. Like, according to who? Like, according to your circumstances? Maybe not. If you're just taking a generic template of success and just trying to apply it to yourself without making any adjustments for who you are and where you are at, that's a mistake in itself.
And it sort of feels like an ego thing where you're doing something, it obviously isn't working, but you don't want to change. It's as if you want to bend everything to your own, to what you want. It doesn't work that way. There are natural laws in the universe that you yourself are subject to, that you have to obey. So if you're working on something, it's not giving you the desired result. Maybe it's time for you to switch something up. Maybe it's time for you to try another approach. Your goal might still be there, but you might try another approach. You understand? So, and when such things don't turn out, to now fall back and say, oh, it's a lie. This dream we've been sold, it's a lie because it didn't work for me. So it's obviously is a lie.
Yeah. It makes no sense. And I mean, and like, yeah, anytime says, like, oh yeah, the system's like, they lie to me. It's like, who's they? Right? Like, you can choose to ingest whatever messages you can. I see so many messages all the time, right? But that doesn't mean I need to believe them, or I need to, like, automatically integrate them. And I think that they are, a lot of times, they don't want to take culpability of the lies that they wanted to believe, right? They want to think that it's easy, that I just need to take this template, I need to follow these steps, and everything will be fine. And it's, they want all the benefits of making a decision, but not take on any of the risks, which would automatically be paired with the rewards. And they're kind of trying to make such a guarantee for their lives that, because to make the risk so small that you're not going to get that much of a reward, you're going to be fall into mediocrity. And I think I mentioned this person, I don't know, I don't even remember what her Twitter handle was, but, like, I remember, like, there's this one woman who, she had a tweet saying, like, I'm too talented to be this poor. And, trying to find, like, okay, what do you do? And she says she makes memes. It's like thinking that talent in itself should just get her money, or like what she thinks is talent, or things that she gives away for, it should just magically, like, flow into her bank account without thinking of the mechanics of how are you doing something that people actually would directly pay you for. Maybe she was thinking of AdSense, but I don't think Twitter pays you. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, maybe she doesn't understand the business model she wants to get into. So now going back to Madam CJ Walker, I wanted to explore another aspect of her life, which is activism. She was sort of a philanthropist and an activist,
Mhm.
during her time. So let's talk about that. What can you say about her role in philanthropy and activism?
Yeah. So one thing that, that was one of her motivations to make a lot of money, was that so that she could help more people. And so, she definitely, so, she invested in the Black community. She, I think she help with funds to build, like, YMCA's, for the community. She donated funds for the Tuskegee Institute. And she, I think, yeah, she donated to the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. She donated to the arts. She, I think, let me see, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I think she built, no, that was her house. I think she founded the Alpha fraternity. She helped with that. Um, of course, I think she was associated with the NAACP. You know, her contemporaries were like Booker T. Washington. And she essentially like she made like a big house in Harlem. I think, no, was it in Harlem? Oh wait, she had a villa in, I think, upstate New York, which kind of just became a gathering of community leaders where they would all talk about these issues and these how to help further their communities' outcomes. So like she was heavily integrated in the community and was constantly giving to help improve opportunities for everybody. Um, and of course, she was definitely into Black entrepreneurship in the fact that she probably, I wouldn't be surprised if, I'm trying to see how many people she employed. Give me a second. I probably should have these numbers off the top of my head, but annual conference. Come on, let me just give me a second. Find.
While she's doing that, I wanted to make a comment about something that I was reading, and I can't remember which book it was that I was reading in. It might have been on the works of Alain Locke, but what he argued were the most American attributes that we share as a society can be actually overrepresented in the racialized Black communities. They really did and more specifically at that point in time, really embodied the ideals that were really truly American ideals.
Okay, she employed over 3,000 people, and honestly, that's more people than like the last company I worked for. Like how many employees they ever had, right? So like she, it's like it easily goes into like a mid-sized company that was an international company. Like she, what's more beneficial to a community than like actually giving people jobs, helping people being financially independent. Like some can argue that's like the best type of philanthropy, right? Actually giving people jobs and educating them with skills that they can actually move on. Like once they leave the company, they have skills. Like you kind of can't get any better than that.
Yeah. So I wanted to comment on what Steve just said. What he drew attention to, that sort of the American values that people usually herald of entrepreneurship, of liberty, of so many of those positive values that many people would see when you say what defines America. This is what defines America. That is sort of seen in the Black communities, because if we're looking at Madam C.J. Walker, and we are even seeing that she is not, she by any measure, she's not unique. She wasn't unique during her time. There were other people who were doing just as great as she was, and to and to take into consideration the fact that slavery just ended like yesterday, and there was legalized discrimination against Black people, yet they were able to, they were able to rise above their station. They were able to do great things. Like the last conversation we had, the conversation I had with Anada and Imam Alfred, he said something that he said, given all the things that African Americans have gone through, he said he might even be tempted to say that, well, maybe we are superior. You understand? Because given all the suppression, oppression, yet they still survived, they still thrived, and all that. So it sort of speaks to what Steve was alluding to, and it's something that I think many more Black people should be aware about when you talk about America. Those values that defines America, those positive values, you understand, that defines America, you can actually see them very, very evident in Black communities.
Yeah. I mean, like, at the end of the day, you don't necessarily like have that type of success without any adversity. Like I said initially, she actually had a problem. She had some adversity to overcome that propelled her to move forward. You sometimes, I think, or most of the time, you need like an impetus to, push the boundaries, because, if there's someone who just has had everything given to them, or, they have a really, really comfortable life, they're not really thinking that they don't even necessarily have the mindset of, you know, understanding, what issues people have, problems. You have to be able to have like empathy on that a certain level of, oh, I see that this is an issue. I understand. I feel this issue. Let, like, go forth and solve it. And then, creating value out of that. Someone who doesn't really have issues can't really see those types of things.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. So because nothing nothing good comes easy. That's a
Mhm.
saying in my country. Nothing good comes easy. There's got to
Yeah.
be some adversity, and when you are faced with this adversity, your response determines what happens next. Are you going to cave in? Are you going to just be broken by it and just give in, or are you going to push? At times, you just need to push a little bit, and then the system just opens up for you. And when you are faced with such tough times, you are building resilience that is going to help you later on, because if you there's usually many people would say Nigerians, when they go to the US, they're very successful, or they're great in education and all that. It's because we have had a lot of training here with the hardships and everything. You understand? You have to put in a lot to get a measurable amount of result. So now you're in a system that sort of functions. You're just going to be like the rocket.
Like
You understand?
slide right
Because
through.
yes, the adversity has sort of built you up such that you are in overdrive already. You're already in overdrive. So when you just get into a system that produces good output with the most minimal effort, you're gonna do great things. You get. So adversity is sort of part of the human condition, and we have to learn to make the most of it, because at times we can't even choose the conditions we find ourselves in. It is not about making. We can't choose where we were born. We can't choose the economic situations of our parents. We can't choose so many other things there's so many things that are out of our control. But we can choose how we respond to those things. We can choose how we interact with our environment and with people around us. We can choose to be defeatist, or we can choose to be optimistic and make the most of any situation we find ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Some meatheads would say, or, people are body, they say no pain, no gain, right? Like even physically, right? In order to build up your body to be fitter, you have to go through the adversity of working out, and that's just, it seems like just a basic fundamental reality of humanity, right? You have to go through adversity just to get any results. Like, you have to plant the field, you have to like plant the crops in order to gain the fruit, right? You have to put work in, and it's never, there's nothing that's ever going to come without any type of adversity, in my opinion. And I think, like, people who, I think, believe that, oh, there's some way that we can, have everything given to us and then be successful. When I see people, like, they don't realize that they're losing something. They lose that resiliency, because, like, the moment you say maybe an off comment to them, they crumble. I once talked, like, one of I had a former friend who was kind of like, this is kind of weird. Like, I think she was working on her master's. She kind of flunked out of that. She was living with her parents for a really long time. Her parents were giving her money. She didn't have a job. And so that type of person, you know, like the moment her parents said, like, just why don't you get a job? She felt that was oppressive, right? And imagine someone who, you know,
Her parents asked her, "Why don't you get a job?"
yeah,
And she felt
yeah,
that was oppressive.
yeah. I think her words were abusive. You know, being she was in her 30s too. Like it's crazy what people think is abusive when it's like actually I think they should have just tossed you out like a long time ago. And but it's just weird when people, you know, are not acclimated to any type of adversity. Like it's amazing as to what they think is oppressive or like what's like unnecessary amount of work or hardship, and you know they're just extremely sensitive, you know, being told to, like, you know, kind of contain your uh yeah, um to
Mr. Bello is hyping you today. Oh.
yeah.
He's
I
doing
should
a
make
hype man.
yeah. um it's it's just the low, like they keep lowering the bar of like as to what is kind of painful. It's maybe it's like the Princess and the Pea type of you know, folk story of like, you know, someone's like a pampered princess if she toss and turns on a mattress that has this little pea at the bottom of it. um yeah, it's, I don't know, it's insane as to, I don't know. I do feel like in America today, like maybe we are a bit of a victim of our own success, and I understand that there is an impetus for people who are successful to pass that on to their children, but sometimes I feel like they make things a little bit too easy, and they don't give their kids enough adversity. I think that that's something that like the parents should consciously give their children so that they don't like have like a little mini breakdown when they're asked to do something basic. You know, I know my brother, he complains that, you know, my dad, what happened was like my dad, his task was to mow the yard, right? And I think that at one point he got the mower, he got the tractor, it's like a riding lawnmower, he got it stuck in a hole. He just got stuck in the hole, right? And my dad, he didn't help him. He refused to help him. And actually, the cops drove by and they were laughing at him because they kind of knew what my dad was doing. Like, oh yeah, like
I didn't ask him for help. I just knew you watching from the window.
my brother just chimed in. He's like, I didn't ask for help. He just knew he was watching from the window. um, but it's but like you have to give these opportunities to your kids for them to figure it out. And I think that, you know, people kind of take for granted the value of adversity, and things are, you know, kind of so cushy now, especially in America, that I think that that's something that people consciously need to actually add back in instead of thinking it's only a detriment to someone. It's actually it helps build character.
Yeah, you know, there was something you said just now that it's something that I've always sort of thought about America, although in another terms. You said somehow it's as if Americans have become victims of their own success. And I usually say that Americans have become enslaved by their own freedom. You know, usually America, land of the free and all that. But to the extent that you want to maximize individual freedoms, sort of you have now enslaved every other person. Take, for
Mhm.
example, with the pronoun thing and all that, because you want to maximize the freedom and the right of every particular individual to do whatever they want to do, to be themselves. Somehow, it's sort of censoring the whole the whole society just to maximize individual freedom. So sort of you're kind of being a slave to your own freedom
Yeah,
in a weird way.
it's I think you're definitely onto something in the sense of like, yeah, I do agree that people should have the freedom, but I think the thing that people are missing is if you the value of freedom is also encompasses like the risks and the consequences of actually enacting your own freedom. So for like the pronoun thing, it's like they want to be able to tell people what their pronouns are and have everybody adhere to that, right? But they don't actually have to, you know they don't actually have to want to bear the brunt of potentially someone pushing back at their, like, with their freedoms on their freedom, right? If
Exactly, exactly.
and understanding that they're in a society of other people with freedoms, and that is something that they have to take into account and manage, right? Like I was, so like the other stuff that I was watching earlier, it was this guy, he was making fun of someone else, who he like he said, like, his exact words was like, I think that there should be more bullying. But his stance really was, is that, like, that's what makes freedom valuable, is that you have the opportunity to espouse, be free and say what you want to say. And people have the right to say something back to you. They have the right to criticize you, because that's what makes it valuable, that there is a risk associated with what you're doing. It means that what you do and say actually means something. If it's there's a risk to it, that someone can actually counter you, that you can be bullied for what you say. But if you really truly believe in it and you want to still say it, that's your right. And then same thing, the other person has a right to saying something back to you. It's what's make the risk of it is what makes it valuable. And if we take away all the risks of saying anything or everyone being censored, that means that people have that value taken away from them. They have that freedom taken away from them.
Yeah, and I also wanted to comment on the thing you talked about. Parents who have become successful, sort of sheltering their children. I think it's a form of overcorrection. For example, some of
Mhm.
these parents have had to go through tough times. They had horrible childhoods. They had periods of want and deprivation, and they resolved in their mind that they're never going to let their kid go through all of that. You understand? And so they just baby them through all the steps of their lives, not knowing that the adversities that they themselves went through were sort of what built them to where they currently are. And if their children do not have some sort of adversity in their life, they may not even be able to maintain the the wealth. They may not be able to maintain the whatever
Mhm.
their parents had worked hard for. So I think there should be a sort of a balancing act where, yes, you want to give your children the best life, but you also want to be able to, you want to want them to be tough, to be strong. I was listening to a woman, I can't remember what her name was, and a very interesting woman, and she was saying something that when she talks to her boys, she has boys or kids, she tells them that, look, you can take risks. In fact, you can injure any part of your body, just as long as you don't injure your spine or your eyes, or your head. Those areas that that they're, if you injure any of those things, you're going to be damaged for life. You understand? So she encouraged them to take risks, and go out there. It's going to make you tougher. It's going to make you stronger. But you think that's something that is currently missing in society, that's being eroded away, where there's just so many safety
Mhm.
measures that makes sure that people do not develop sort of immunity to adversity.
Yeah, I think that even I think, like, this goes into the research that Jonathan Haidt has gone has is talking about. And like, even as simple as, I think they're saying there needs to just be more unsupervised play in for kids, especially in America. And there are so many places in the US, like in different states, that are criminalizing parents for actually having their children unsupervised. There was a woman who, I think she had like two jobs or something like that, and so she sent her daughter to the public park to play while she was working. And I think the woman, she was arrested or fined for her kid going to a public park, which is for children. And it pushes this idea that children should be monitored at all times, that they should never actually have the capacity of trying out the skills that they actually learn for their future, right? If one kid has a dispute with another child, they have to figure it out, even if they fight, right? Even if they have, even if at first, they resolve the conflict improperly, they will learn next time, maybe I shouldn't do that, or maybe I shouldn't, like say something so rude to someone that could punch me in the face. And then that's how you learn skills, by actually trying different things, applying it, and then trying again. And you're depriving children of learning experiences and actually understanding that there are consequences. If you prevent them from understanding consequences really early on, when the stakes are really, really low, it's kind of dangerous to suddenly, when they're adult, okay, now you're responsible for everything. And that's, I can see how that psychologically, you cannot take suddenly, you go from a moment where you have no risk, you don't know how to cook for yourself, you don't do anything for yourself, and suddenly, oh yeah, you're graduated, you have a job, and you have to manage everything, and you have to do all this stuff for yourself. I think that's how you end up with like adult children, right, who still like end up somehow, they always go back home because like, well, I couldn't handle it. And the parents wonders like, why is my kid still living at home?
Now, this reminds me of a story my mom told me, that when she was a kid in primary school, that there was this guy that was always bullying her. So one day he bullied her, and she went home crying. And then her grandmother told her that, look, you can't be my child and someone is bullying you every day. You're crying. Go back. You have to beat him. To if you don't
Yeah.
beat him, don't come back to the house. And in that anger, she just went back. I think she took, was it a cutlass or something? She went back with it. And even though I wouldn't recommend this, but she actually injured the guy. But that was the end of the bullying for her. You get,
Mhm.
the moral of it is that you have to sort of push back. You get, if she hadn't pushed back, if her grandmother always cuddled her and said, oh, and grandmother always went to the school to fight on her behalf, she may not have had, gotten that courage to fight back, and which stopped the bullying. Because most of these bullies, once you're able to fight back, they'll stop. They're just
Mhm.
looking for people who are weak that they can prey on. You get, so it's something that, even though my country is still very traditional, but a lot of these babying and pampering and all that is seeping in. Then we used to be able to go play, just play, you just go out. When I go to my grandmother's place, we go out and we catch grasshoppers, we catch dragonflies. Kids just play on the streets. You understand? When it's evening, everybody goes back home, and we're all safe. Nothing happened to
Yeah.
us. Yeah. But today, it's very difficult to find kids coming out to play, except maybe in the very, very poor areas. In the posh areas, you're not going to see kids coming out to play. They're
Mhm.
just going to be indoors with their phones and with all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there's like, people who were born in like the 60s or something like that, like, like they do these surveys of like, when was the first time you were able to go outside and play without unsupervised, just kids going out and play, like,
I remember that study. Yeah.
yeah. And like, it was like, like for people like the whole generation at 6 years old, like they're going out all day, for hour, like, 8 hours a day, and then they only come in for like lunch or supper. And for them that's normal. But then you kind of ask like the parents today, is like, would you just let them sit out in front of the yard unsupervised? And they're like, oh no. And even though statistically, like, America is even safer than back then. um and people, I think it is also partially the 24-hour news cycle of where they hyper emphasize kids in, like, in danger, and all these things. If you get a skewed sense of there's more danger out there, when it's like, well, they're just kind of broadcasting one story of a kid. um there's one story of a kid who, like maybe a few states over, but everyone's talking about it, and it feels like it happened locally, but it didn't. And it was like a very particular scenario. Or, when people talking about like kidnappings. I remember when I was in Texas, almost every single night a kid was like, children were kidnapped. But most kidnappings are family members, right? You see like, oh, this person, and you see the last name is like, oh, it's obviously a dad who kidnapped his children, probably custody issues, and then someone was women kidnapping their own children, again probably because of custody issues. And so it's like a weird, we have this movie idea of what danger lies for children, like stranger danger, but most of the time it's local, it's within the family. And worrying about people lurking at like the playground is it's not as much of a danger as people in your actual life.
Well, there was back in the 80s and 90s, I'm sure everybody's heard the term, it's 10 o'clock, do you know where your children are? Right? This was actually a news media phrase during that period of time, because there were a rash of child abductions throughout the 80s and 90s. They became much more publicized. But what you had is that you had this creation, and Jonathan Haidt speaks to this in The Coddling of the American Mind, where you had parents who were slowly becoming helicopter parents. And the problem with that is when you do that and you don't let your children go out and play or get hurt, rough and tumble play, you basically, in a simplified way of what the book discusses, is you create a child who is incapable of handling any adversity, including physical and emotional. Right? They can't handle a world that is hard, like physically hard. They grew up in the house with cushions, and it's a soft place, it's a safe place, but that doesn't prepare them for the world outside of the home. Play does that. Interaction with other children does that. And Nicholas Nassim Taleb, I believe I got his name right that time, he wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. And it's a fantastic book. Most of it has to deal with business, but if you read between the lines, you can take out quite a bit of social advice as well as psychological advice. But when you break your leg and it heals, it's so hard to break that in the same place. So the leg now becomes even stronger. So when we challenge ourselves and we push ourselves through adversity and difficult times, or in the case of who we're talking about today, oppression, right? This is one of the reasons why I believe it was Elaine Locke. I read so many Black authors recently, I'm forgetting who's who, but I believe he was discussing how one of the reasons why the racialized Black community thrived as much as it did, even under Jim Crow, and how they expressed a truly American ideal of virtue, was they worked under such a oppressive hand that they had to fight tooth and nail for everything. And it made them incredibly hard, like just really industrious, hard characters. You couldn't defeat these folks, and nothing was going to keep them down. And you saw them being successful in the worst environments. And that is something that how we treat our children today, we don't do the same. Like, you can drive down any road, you will not see a kid outside playing. I literally have to physically kick my child out of the house and be like, go outside, and go and play. But none of the kids on our street play. None of them play outside, and none of them play with each other. And it's absolutely ridiculous, because I grew up, we had this dirt field that we would go roam around in and ride our BMX bikes. And I mean, we did some shady stuff. Like, I mean, we're talking about crossing a highway to go off of a ramp, just to clear about 2 feet of air. And I mean, we were obviously stupid, but we were smart about it, if that makes any sense. But it was the falls, it was the bruises, it was the scrapes, it was the stitches that made me personally an individual who is not just indestructible, but unbeatable. There was a better word that I was looking for there, but people cannot break me, because I built that built that strength within myself because of the things that I did as a child, and because my parents didn't let me get away with things. They were tough but loving parents. They pushed me. They pushed my ideas. I mean, they were absolutely brilliant parents, and I wish I was a tenth of the parent my parents were. But this is definitely part of a problem where we have people that can't even sit in the same vicinity as an idea that may conflict with their own,
Mhm.
and that is very problematic.
Yeah. When you're talking, it made me think of like I don't know if have you ever seen like the videos of rocket jump, right? They do all these like I think they were film students or maybe they dropped out or something like that, but they do like a lot of these high really polished like skits and CGI and all that kind of stuff. But then you're asking like when they actually talk about how they got started in filmmaking, for them it was a lot of stuff where, oh yeah, we like going to the woods and setting stuff on fire, so we got used to like simulating explosions. And so when they went to film school, they actually had a lot more experience than the other kids who were more coddled, because they actually went out and did stuff. They got messy. They took risks. And so that obviously is made like a huge factor in their confidence when they did do other different types of filmmaking, which they knew they were comfortable with the physicality of it. They were comfortable getting close enough to the flame or whatever, to making interesting shots, because they already had practice doing it. And
Right. And well, if I can interject here really quick, because I got to get back to work, but something that was interesting that you just sparked a memory of mine was that when I was playing outside, we had railroad tracks by my house, but we had a lot of rattlesnakes around in the area too. And so my parents actually had to teach me what a rattlesnake looks like. We actually went out, found one. They described it to me, said, "This will kill you. You will die if you get near this." And so what did they do? They prepared me for a world that is really indifferent to my existence, right? But they taught me to value mine. And on top of that, that's also a symbolic a picture of certain people, right? We've always heard that person is a snake, right? It immediately makes us remember that time when we learned something about the snake that could kill us, right?
yeah,
And so these little lessons that we learn, whether our parents know it or not, unknowingly teach us that some things in this world are dangerous and they don't care about you, and they would just prefer to eat you rather than play with you.
yeah.
Right? The world is not soft.
Yeah, you have to look out for yourself. And I think that gets into a criticism that sometimes I see people of, corporations, right? And they say like, the corporations don't care about you and all these things don't care about you. And then for me, I'm like, no duh. Like they're a company, they care about keeping their profits and all that kind of stuff. But it's really weird for me to see people have that basic expectation that this amorphous, group of people who are in business for money should actually have a very personal sense of care and consideration for you as an individual, and they should care about your emotions. And that kind of tells me that those people that's the world that they came from. They never interacted with the world in the sense of, oh, this thing doesn't care about me, I have to navigate around it. And I don't know, like it's at least for me, it's like, it's, of course, like the company that I just joined, they probably don't care about me like in general. But that's why, when I joined, I negotiated for things that I wanted, right? To make sure that I get a good deal out of being employed by this company, instead of just expecting the company to be like a new parent, to coddle me and to give me everything that I wanted and to anticipate what I need without me ever saying anything. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to make space. You have to be the person who make boundaries, to make space for yourself, to negotiate for yourself, instead of just expecting the world to automatically do that, conform to you. Hey, Dev.
Hi, Dev. Welcome to the conversation. Jump right in.
Go to sleep.
Hi, Dev.
Hey, good night, everyone. Anik, I'm on a panel. Sorry. I'm on a panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Hey, See if you get it out.
Sorry about that. I just want to share the part of going out and having fun as a kid. I think that is um lost somewhere because we had way more fun back then and we were more creative because a lot of things we have to make on our own. Like we have to make our own tops, make our own kites, even make our own scooters. So we were more creative, we were more adventurous because a lot of the things we couldn't buy it in the store. So we would want to see, for example, you get to what you call cans, and you cut them in half and you put a piece of stick between them, and you have a yo-yo that goes up and down that lights. So we were really creative, and I think that is missing the creativity in children that we have to figure out things on our own because
Huh? So you know things on a. I think they showed. Yeah, I think they.
sorry.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Um,
Oh crap! Thank you,
thanks, Deb.
Thank
Anik.
you, Deb.
Sorry,
Um,
that's my daughter that come and give me trouble.
uh,
Oh,
Sorry.
oh.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that I look at the kids today and I'm saying, God, I'm sorry for you guys. Seriously. I'm really sorry. Because back then we take a lot of risk. And we looking back now, it's like, how the hell I didn't die from that? How the hell my hand or foot didn't break from that? But you was adventurous. You was like a daredevil back in those days. You had no fear. We used to go out in boats with no engine way, way out and don't know that we coming back. Those things were risky. Going to parties way out of our village and don't know we getting home. These things, help create and bring out the creativity in you. You will see the rich folks, children having certain things. You would look at it and said, okay, I can make that. And you go home and you get your bow and you make your gun. And trust me, if you do it in a certain way and paint it up, man, you can get about $10 or $5 for it because of you use your own creativity and it helps you to think outside the box as a child. You don't keep you in a box. Like nowadays they have peer pressure. I didn't know what that was, but when I put two and two together, we used to call that follow fashion. That's what we used to call peer pressure back then, follow fashion. And we didn't want to follow no one. We want to be better than anybody else. So it's a matter of competition. Example, you go on the basketball court, you want to be better than the next guy. So you're not going to follow what he's doing. You're going to come up with your own stuff, whatever it is. Even though it looks crazy, at least you come up with it. And I think that is what we had back then. We had creativity. We had being our own leader, not trying to let our friends pressure us. See what I'm saying? So I see a lot of kids going up, but oh, he make me do. No, 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 no. Because back then we had a strong mind. If I've said I'm not gonna smoke weed, I'm not gonna smoke weed. You wanna smoke weed, go right ahead. And they knew that from day one. So they know once they hang with me, don't pass that close to me. Oh no, Devon don't nah. I said lower down, fire down, way down there. So I'm saying if once you set a foundation, people intend to respect you along the way. But if you don't set a foundation, you can go wherever the crowds take you. Because now you've been influenced by your friends. And I see that happen a lot with kids. Because I grew up and had a lot of friends we hang out with. And a lot of things we do based on influence. We didn't want to do it, but because of our friend, and we think that they're gonna say, boy, you didn't jump in our fight, what happened? Yeah, snitch or something. So you don't want to be, So anyway, I'm going to shut up now. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Dave.
thank you. I definitely agree, and it's interesting that caused me to think about something about people like younger people today and how they they are looking at Instagram and all these things, and they are blaming these platforms for making them compare themselves to their peers, right? Or like like, oh, this is where my peers are, or whatever. But it's, again, one, you don't have to do that, but and two, like, when you do that, you can only stagnate, right? Like, if you're compared, like, if, let's say you're 25 and you're only comparing your life to a 25-year-old, it's and then they're all doing the same thing, you're all going to stagnate, right? But for me, I realize, when I compare myself to people, or when I see what else I want to do, I always look at people who are older than me. See, like, okay, what did they do? Okay, and then try to figure out, you know where they're in life and how I can get there, which kind of propels me to move forward. I'm not going to compare my life to other people at my age, because I just might be normal, I might be average, and it's not going to tell me anything other than, okay, you're average, but it doesn't help me figure out what I can do in the future. And I do understand that, like, younger people say it's a comforting feeling that if you're feeling like you're failing in life, that other people are failing in the same way. But again, that kind of reinforces stagnation, that, like, you're all like, oh, as long as we're all failing together, it's okay. And it's like, I don't think it's really like, you at the end of the day, like, your whole group of friends, or your whole peer group, like, every, like, you still have to live with yourself, that you just kind of let yourself settle. And then they blame society, that the society let themselves, like, no, you kind of did that feedback cycle, and you kind of did that to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when Dev was talking about, being creative as a kid, it just brings me, it's sort of bringing back some memories of my childhood. In fact, tomorrow I'm actually traveling for my uncle's wedding. He's younger than me, but he's my uncle anyway, because my grandfather had three wives, and he still had some kids after after we came along. So now my uncle, this is my younger uncle. We used to play a lot, and we invented games when we were kids. Just invent games, and it was fun. It was interesting. You get.
Yep.
And I know we used to make kites. We used to make boats. In fact,
Hmm.
we could make the just the normal small boats, or we could make a ship with paper.
Hmm.
We made helicopters. We made, there's so
Hmm.
many things that we made that's just coming to my mind. And we also made we had football. This football, this we played football made from, our players were cover bottles, these Coca-Cola
Hmm.
bottles, the
Yep.
top of the
Hmm.
Coca-Cola bottles. Yeah, at
Hmm.
the top, those companies then they're putting the names of players, Raul, Luis
Hmm.
Figo, Beckham, and all that on the top of the cover bottles. So we'll make teams on opposite sides. We'll make our goalposts with the sugar carton. We'll even build a goalkeeper. We'll panel beat those bottles together and use it to build a giant goalkeeper that can stand in the middle
Hmm.
of the goalpost. And then we have a small ball that we use the cover bottle to just hit, take
Hit it.
turns to
Yeah.
hit. Yeah, just take turns to hit. You get into the goal. And I can tell you, my Beckham was scoring goals like a real
I
Beckham.
know. I know he was. I know he was.
So it was fun. It was fun.
It
I
was
don't think kids do
creative
that.
to the best. It
Yes,
was
and kids
creative
don't
to
do
the
that
best.
nowadays.
We used to make what you call board cart. Yeah. And what we will do is get candle and rub underneath it. Yeah. To make it smooth and go up on a hill. I don't know how we don't go over and over the precipice. To be honest with you, I don't know how we don't end up over the, because the precipice is a drain away from where we coming down, and we are coming on this speed, and we don't have no brakes on it. Yeah, and I'm telling you, it is just fun. And you go back up and do it all over again, over and over. So I'm just saying that we even used to make what you call coconut bats to play cricket. A lot of you may not know what is a coconut bat. A coconut bat is the leaf of the coconut, the fat part way up at the joint. You cut that and you make a bat with it. And we used to play cricket with that as little
I
boys growing
actually
up.
have one of those.
Okay, good. Then you know what I'm talking about. We used to play cricket in the
Yes, sir.
road with that. It was those days was fun, man. And mind you, we out all day. We out all day. We is not just going out for 2 hours and come back. You spend the whole day outside. Sometimes you know when you come back, your legs is waiting for you, but you don't care. You're going right back up the next day because sometimes we overstay and forget the time, and you come home and your mother is at the door looking at you with her face, and you know what time is it? You just take your legs, go get a shower, and go sleep. You got to do tomorrow again. So it was really fun. I wouldn't trade it for nothing. I will not trade my years growing up for nothing. It has made me who I am today. It has taught me a lot. I can look back and say, wow, we had some wonderful time. We had some good time whereby we were competing mentally with each other. We were using our creativity to compete with one another. And don't talk about dressing. Dressing is a whole nother ball game. We used to create some styles like, oh Lord have mercy. I wouldn't wear them today, but it's just trying to outdo each other. And that bring the creativity out of you. Because you go see what a guy put on it like, nah boy, he gonna get all the chairs on the blocks. Let me go and get something slicker. And you go and put on something just for the laugh of it and just for the recognition. You know what I mean? Might just dress up with jacket and tie and a socks in your foot and come down the road. We used to do a lot of craziness. You know, it
Yeah,
was
Well,
fun.
I have a real concern that that maybe this generation is sort of the last creative generation,
Mm.
last truly creative generation that we're going to have, and that maybe the next generation there's going to be so much shortage in terms of actual creativity that it may be bad for human society. You understand?
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
everything is now pre-made.
yeah,
Everything is
yeah.
synthesized from computers and everything. So
We
you
can
can.
see it happening already.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I kind of disagree with it just a little bit because I think
Okay.
we might be measuring creativity in a different way than what is present now. So, like the kind of creativity, due to the fact that we have this massive resource called the digital age, media, computers, the creativity might just be changing how it looks.
Mm.
So I'm not ready to say that this generation, we're going to be the last generation of creative people. I think the creativity changes. It just might have a different value attached to it.
well,
But I
But
don't
did you
know.
think it really might?
There's just
well,
something about it that just, I don't want to say that this generation, because you have so many new artists, especially like on Spotify that are, there's millions and millions of creative individuals making music. Look at Unpopular Purpose. I mean, the dude is awesome, right?
I
And
am.
then you just look at a bunch of different types of people and artists and digital art and stuff like that. I mean, there's a broad range of new creativity that was not present before.
Well,
I'm looking at the process of it. Go ahead, Sudhi.
yeah, yeah. So I guess it's not it's like even with all these different mediums, I it's not a comment that like, oh, they're not creative in this particular way, but like what you could the art from people who haven't necessarily faced adversity looks different from the art of people who actually have tried things, who have taken risks, who aren't afraid of, you know, what their vision, putting out their vision, and then seeing who picks it up. You know, and the thing is, I think that in this age, the people who are used to being creative, being adventurous, taking risks, are going to have a huge advantage over the people who are just used to people saying, "Oh, this looks great, honey," and sweetie, and all that kind of stuff. I saw like so I saw a critique, and I watched the critiques of things that I will never watch or never play or whatever, but it was a very interesting critique of this one anime that was made. You know, it's kind of interesting. It's an anime that wasn't made in Japan and was made by Westerners, but they had this whole promotion of it's an all female writing, and so they made like this anime called High Guard Spice, where it was about like 4 girls go to like a guardian school where they learn magic and battling and all that kind of stuff. But the biggest complaint about the show was that it was so uninspired. It looked like, you know, all of these other creative things that happened in the past, but it was a pale comparison of it. And so, you know, it's like, okay, they like, you know, one, they kind of didn't really take risks. None of the characters had any growth. None of like, they didn't actually even have anything interesting to add to the medium of animation. It looks like, oh, they can tell they saw this anime, they tried to recreate this scene, but they kind of did it poorly. And so
oversaturation of a product.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're not taking risks. Like they're looking at something that is successful, and they're just kind of doing it themselves, but it's without heart. And I think that that's kind of what we're talking about, of maybe an oversaturation of people who they're not used to taking risks, so they just take what was successful in the past, and it kind of just becomes more and more diluted, where people just aren't excited about it anymore. But when someone comes up with like something completely new and that has never been, you know, done before, people will eat it up because it's just fresh and it's different. Even if it takes elements of things that had existed in the past, putting things in a different configuration from a perspective that hasn't really been tried on a grand scan before, is people are just going to love it and eat it up. And even if people don't agree with it, it's just going to be more successful. And this is I remember there is there's this YouTuber that does horror reviews, but for some reason he did a 30-minute review of Tyler Perry movies. It's like it's this white reviewer who does horror stuff, but he watched everything that Tyler Perry had created, and he was like, this is interesting. I can see why he's successful. He is successful in Hollywood because he was able to do whatever he wanted in film because no one was paying attention to him. He targeted such a specific niche that for so long no one in Hollywood paid attention to him, like in grander Hollywood. So that by the time he reached a critical mass of the success of, I think he's one of the richest people in Hollywood at this point, no one had the opportunity to complain about the stuff that, you know, some of the stuff that he has in his movies, even in his earlier movies, are things that would be controversial. And if Hollywood was paying attention to that, he would have been canceled a long time ago. But he has such a such a strong, like, you know, vision, niche, and what he was doing and the audience that he was specifically tailoring to. Any other thing that about his filmmaking or his stories or whatever that doesn't fit in with the Hollywood formula or what's kind of normal with like their sentiments, it doesn't matter. He has momentum. He can do whatever he wants now.
Yeah, and I don't know. Did anybody see this latest Matrix movie? Because it sort of just highlights the lack of creativity or so that's defining even movies, Hollywood these days. I mean, it was just such a piss poor job. It took the original idea and just made a ridicule of it, and you can see that in so many other movies, maybe reboots and all that are being made today. You get, so it's as if they're running out of ideas, and I don't know what to make of it. But I do see Steve's point anyway. I do that maybe the nature of what creativity is just evolving into something else.
Yeah, but like the people who are involved into it are taking risks, so they are like, I think those people just might move to those mediums. But yeah, for traditional kind of media stuff, I see it's
I think how I look at it, and Steve do has a point, huh? But how I look at it is like now everything is put there for you. Someone has created it and put it on a platform for you. You may have to use your brain a little bit to jiggle and juggle if you into that field. But I'm talking about back then, whereby, example, Carnival over here. I used to live next to a man that literally make costumes, and you'll be amazed how he go about making it. Like for the headpiece, he would use mud, like make a mud mold, and carve a headpiece out of it. And that takes a couple days for it to complete. Wire bending and twisting and all these things are so it doesn't look creative when you start it, but when you see the finished product of it, you're wondering how did this come out of what what I see from the beginning. So I'm saying nowadays is like cut and paste and ooh, it look beautiful. Pull one from here and pull one from there and you get a quote unquote beautiful picture. But back then, these people will take what will look ugly and transform it into something that is desirable to their eyes. You see, and they look at what is on the ground and envision in their mind what the outcome would look like, and literally put that together to make it materialize so that you can look at it at the finished product. But when you look at it from the scrap, you will look at it as a bunch of rubbish. But it's what they can, and this is what I'm saying. Steve has a point, but what I'm saying is that I don't think it helping the youths enough to be so creative because these men and women had to go out and look for things to fit that creativity that they're looking for, the image that they're looking for. So they
Well,
might
I
have
want to
go,
agree with you on that, Dev. And I think what the point, I think what you're hitting on, but not actually saying, is that the creativity that we used to see expressed almost it almost seems like it appeared out of absolutely nowhere except for in this person's mind. Whereas today, the creativity, there's such a vast wealth, a library of styles and
yeah,
pictures and reference photos that anybody can create anything from anything because it's already been done to some extent. But the creativity when you have nothing
yeah,
and you pull something from that is specifically unique
yeah,
to that person. And that's what I think that when I'm hearing what you're saying, that's what I hear you say.
yeah. That is what missing.
Yeah, yeah. I think Steve summarized it very, very
Yes,
beautifully.
he did.
Because currently, you can make things from like I said, everything is prepackaged now. It's like all you just need to do is assemble, 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 and you have something. You understand? Everything is so fast. You get. Anyhow, Ben, welcome to the conversation.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Charles. Hey, Chloe. Hey, Dev. Hey,
Hey,
Steve.
what's up, Ben?
Hey Ben, how's it going, man?
Good, good. It's been wonderful listening to you guys over the last 35 minutes or so. I called in because the things you guys were talking about, the stuff that you did as kids, immediately kind of strung a chord with me. Um, so you guys talked about how important it is for kids to play outside, especially with others, and how important creativity is. And I just made me remember, like, so back in the day I was a homeschooled kid, so I wasn't in school with a bunch of the other kids, which meant also unfortunately that I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. So it was actually really difficult for me to kind of get in with the rest of the kids because my social skills just weren't really developed. But I really enjoyed reading books and then going outside and kind of doing what you guys were talking about, that kind of creativity, whether it was just digging trenches in the ground for my army men so that I could kind of set up a whole battlefield, or like one of my favorite things that I did, one of the coolest things was I actually built like a ballista, which is like an old school Roman style catapult thing that looks like a huge crossbow. I built that in my backyard.
How much time
I-
did you have on your hands?
Oh, a lot, bro, a lot.
Cow,
I
dude.
also, you know, made swords and eventually got into blacksmithing. There's like various pieces of metal art that are just hung around my dad's barn, even to this day, like 30 years after the fact, like cool, like twisted, forged barn hooks and stuff like that. So,
Ladies
like,
and gentlemen, the example of what we've been talking about for the last 35 minutes
yeah,
is now
this
in the
is
room.
kinda, yeah,
Congratulations, Ben. You are our poster child for the day.
Well, that's probably why I was like, I should call in and just give an opinion here, because you sounds like you're talking about my life.
Ben's in here all making us all feel like crap. Like, I made a paper airplane. Ben, I made swords because I was bored.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so here's the funny thing, though, guys. The funny thing about all this is that, like, later in life, like currently, I have probably 1,200, 1,500 US dollars worth of historical European swordsmanship fencing gear, like stashed at various places around my house. Like, I eventually did get into doing what's called historical European martial arts, with a focus on fencing with swords, like later on in life. And like, it's been really fun, and there's a lot of things that you learn from that kind of thing that you'd learn in a lot of other like martial arts. But I guess my point is just that, you know, one of the
You're
struggles that
better
I
than
had,
all of us?
no. One of the struggles, this did not come easily, Steve. It came with a big price, because when I would try and talk to kids, when I had an opportunity, who were like my own age, like around 12, about the things that I was doing and interested in, I just got blank stares, because like they're talking about like football and basketball and that kind of stuff. The girls are talking about whatever they're talking about, because I don't know what's going on there, right? And so, you know, it actually caused me a lot of pain, because I was not prepared for the way that other kids kind of viewed the world, the values that they had. And I didn't have a whole lot in common with them. So it was actually really difficult for me. But I guess what I'm saying is that somewhere there's a happy medium where you're an amount of ability to kind of go out and be a self-starter on your own, come up with your own ideas. That's all really important. But it's also important to be able to do that in a context where other people are involved in that, because the things you do with people, the people you do them with, are actually sometimes more important than the things that you're doing. And when you're alone, you don't get that part of the puzzle. You just kind of, and you know, what ended up happening was later on, I had issues, you know, just in like communication with people, because I had so many thoughts I wanted to share, and I wasn't really, you know, prepared for normal discourse, I guess you could say, which is why I'm hogging the floor right now. So, you know, everything comes with trade-offs. But yeah, I just figured I'd kind of jump in and give my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, like his on, like as a kid, you have to practice trade-offs, risk management, evaluating risk reward. And like, it's interesting of how, like, you have that type of background, Ben. And then, if someone met you as an adult, they're like, wait, how did you get into this? Right. Because, they didn't necessarily have the freedom presented to them as a child, that like you can get into like these weird niche things, or that cost benefit of, you had the cost of maybe you did something other kids didn't do as a kid, but the benefit is that like you're a very interesting adult. And then
Right. Yeah, that's the difference.
And the other adults are like, well, how did you get a cool, like, how did you get a cool hobby? And it's like, well, you have to like kind of be a weird kid and not a weird kid at the beginning. Yeah,
So,
I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I just want to jump in and say real quick, I started a new job like a little over 90 days ago. And I came in and got hired in with like a bunch of other guys, like 3 other guys at that time. And people had asked about putting in like a profile when you first come in of like the things that are unique about you. So I filled that out, and it was only like a few paragraphs. But my life is so weird that I got like a million comments from people once I actually like had my first day, where they were like, "Wow, so I read you like did blacksmithing and like you do sword fighting and like you were homeschooled, and what is all this stuff?" And yeah,
It's
you're
a good
right.
thing
It's
you're
just
already
really
married,
weird.
dude.
Which I think is hilarious in and of itself. That's some pretty good sarcasm there, Steve. That's top shelf. But yeah, no, it's. But here's the thing: I want to be able to tell other kids, other kids, but kids, current day kids, like, hey, it's okay to kind of do your own thing, but it is also important to be able to have friends and people who you can be close with and share these things with, because there's nothing worse than having all of that interest and then no one to share it with. I had a brother who was 7 years younger than me, and that helped me out some. But 7 years is a long time, especially when you're young. So, it's hard for a 11-year-old to relate with like a 4-year-old.
Hey,
Yeah.
Chloe.
Yeah.
Ben's stealing all of your tooth bombs.
That's right.
Oh, dude, I tell you, I've told you once, I'll tell you again. Chloe, we are Chloe, or at least Chloe is me,
I
because
think
every
so.
time she says something, I'm just like, yep, agree with that, agree with that, agree with that. It's very strange because her mind and my mind like are literally on the same track. Like, I'll be listening to what someone's saying, and then I'll be like, the thing about that is, and then Chloe will say what I'm thinking, and I'm just like, oh, that's so weird. Okay, cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. At least like so as a kid for me, well, I disassembled some things. Like I disassembled like electronic stuff, and I got like in quite a bit of trouble because my parents, like I think at one point they were like, "Oh, someone else cannibalized the thing." I'm like, "Oh wait, I did that." But like for as a kid, like and in Alaska, like when they would push up, like so, at the playground, right? They would, have a bulldozer that pushes like all of the snow out of the parking lot. And so like as like a little kid, it's like suddenly there's like a mountain of snow, right? And what we would do is we would make like these grooves in the snow, but sometimes like even if like so I remember this one, it was like really really fast, like we crafted like this ice slide, right? But they had done the bulldozer near the end, and so we knew at the end it was like a sudden drop straight on ice. And still we would go to like do like the little mountain, like to the top of the mountain pile, right, the snow pile, and just like go down this like super fast like ice slide, only to know at the very end it's like suddenly like our butts are just like and we just did that all the time. Or we would make like little ice caves, right? We probably would have suffocated to death, but we figured it out. Yeah, a lot of times playing in the woods, making like doing jumps and eating very suspicious berries. My brother got a really bad rash once when he found like this off raspberry patch. It had like this fungus apparently, but no one cared. Like, free raspberries, just go out into the woods and just eat your fill. And yeah, it's getting all types of trouble in the woods and on the lake and everything like that. It's really sad that other kids don't really like, you see other people don't have those type of experiences. It's just like everything's online. Everything's kind of like likes and follows and sad. It's just really
Yeah,
sad.
but shouldn't we be thinking that it's sort of a miracle that we're alive today, given all those
Yeah.
things that we did?
Seriously?
Yeah, but I
seriously?
think it goes to like how resilient, like we know how resilient people can be. Like the fact that we know we survived is like, oh, you can handle it. Like I survived this. Like you can handle something like that's mildly like, I don't know. In comparison, it's like, oh, that's mildly uncomfortable. Like you can just do it. What's wrong with that? And again, like understanding like risk management, like then when you're actually, it seems like when you're faced with something that is like obviously more dangerous, you're like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. Because I remember I like in one summer in college, I went to Turkey, and I had a, like during the evenings we can kind of go out and go to different places, and so kind of figuring out like, okay, yeah, this is fine. Even if you don't speak the language, we're in Istanbul, so it's a major city, and so things can be shady or whatever, and just kind of figure out your way. But like the guy I was with, he just like had no real gauge as to what was risky or what wasn't. It was really weird because there are certain things like, oh, what's wrong going over here? And it's like, one, that's not in the direction of where we're going, but two, it's like, why? There's no benefit to this risk, so why would you take it? Right? Like it makes sense of like taking a risk if there's a benefit, but he just was kind of really clueless, and I kind of felt like I had to like guide him around Turkey because he wanted to do like really weird things. But there are some times where suddenly he didn't want to take a risk when obviously it was safe. Like, so it was like in the middle of the day, we're at like the Turkish market, like the spice market, and we needed to call someone. So I needed to like, okay, can you just stay here? It's in the middle of the day. It's a tourist place. And I can even tell who's a plainclothes cop that's like walking around. So I'm like, okay, there are clearly cops around. I'm just going to go around the corner by myself, and I'm just going to use the payphone. And he's like, I don't feel safe doing that. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, you don't feel safe doing that? Like, it just seems like his whole risk management was just completely off. And like, if your if you haven't experienced enough risk, and then you're kind of faced with something like, okay, this is a benefit, this risk is worth it, or you can't gauge it very well, you might not even take opportunities that are worth it. You're afraid of taking things that why not try it?
Totally agree. Totally agree. With that.
Risk averseness is what you're talking about.
Yeah, risk aversion. Yeah. And yeah, it's.
So let me
I
tell
think
you
it's
about what we used to do. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben. I wanted to close the conversation, so but just get your thoughts in so that we can close.
Okay, well, one last little thing about my life growing up. So I had this friend named Lucas, and Lucas was another homeschooler, and we went to the same church. He's one of 13 kids, by the way, all from the same man and woman. So this gives you a little bit of idea of like the different context that I lived in compared to like the 2.1 children, kind of white picket fence, typical white people you think of. So we go over to his place, and his uncle has an aftermarket car part business where he has this whole like metalworking shop with aluminum, like sheet aluminum that he uses to basically cut out these parts and then process them. Well, the scrap aluminum is left everywhere. And we're 12 years old, so power tools like band saws and all kinds of other very scary stuff we had full access to, along with like pounds and pounds of this scrap aluminum that was, by the way, long and pointy enough to be made into a sword. So we made like probably, I'm not joking, like 40 or 50 of these things. And we would do fencing with essentially sharp metal objects with no hand protection, no eye protection, no face protection, no any protection of any kind.
Were
If
you
we had
guys
rain-
suicidal or what?
What's no, dude, it's cool. It was cool. You really felt like you were, in the movies, which is of course all we had to go on. YouTube had never come around yet, right? So we couldn't look and see what people like actually knew about this stuff. So we were just, but our hands got mangled from these things. Because I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but if you're holding a sword out from your body, the closest thing that's yours to the opponent's sword is your hand. So your hand gets hit all the time, even when you're really careful. And so like to this day, we and a couple of other friends that we did this with all have scars on our hands from this. But those are some of the coolest like moments that were just so cool and frankly badass when I was a kid. And I just like, I don't know, that is such a cool thing. I want my kids to be able to have that level of like, maybe, okay, I won't actually want that for my kids because I'll be afraid for them, just like my parents were for me.
There it is. There
But,
it is.
but the fact is that you kind of have to put
Reality
some,
check.
you have to put some faith in the process though, and realize that the same process that made you is the one that is going to make your children and your children's children, etc. So those are my final words.
All right, thank you. So Steve, let's hear from you. Then Dev and Chloe.
Well, I would say I'll go last.
Okay, so Dev.
Ladies first. I'm being respectful.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Ben said. It's like you have to respect the process, and I think that is getting back to Madam C.J. Walker. For her success was a process. It's all a process. You know, you have to take the good with the bad. You have to take the adversity, and you have to work on it. You have to work the process to produce something of value afterwards. And all of these things, you know, everyone's talking about, they've learned something. They've learned how to do something. They've learned, they have an interest in something. They've, you know, tested their steel of, you know, like standing up to peer pressure, you know, testing their creativity, knowing the capacity of their creativity, being adventurous, risk management, you know, understanding all these things. They're all valuable. And, you know, in a world where, you know, people are trying to sanitize the lives of people, that implicitly they're devaluing those things, that we need all of these risks in our lives to, you know, have that come to fruition. So, you know, it's all a process that, you know, takes creativity, risk, and adversity. And, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of it.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chloe. So Dev.
Yeah, I know you're coming at me. How I look at it as, look, I try and look at it from the perspective of, if you look at the beautiful diamond and chain that you see in these shops, they didn't just get to that point just like that. They have to scrape and burn and twist and turn, and sometimes you have to dig thousands of feet to get them. But after you have mold them and fashion them and shine them up, look at the finished product. That is our life today. We are, you see, the more we are being tested, the more the best of us come out. Because it challenges us to be better. It challenges us to think out of the box. And I think that's what I've learned growing up, is that it makes you so fearless that, look, I can achieve, in spite of the, let's say, how much busted you get, how much cut, how much fight you've been in. You learn something from it that you can take going forward in your life. So I think everything has a purpose, but it all depends on how you view it, going through it and after. If you think of it negative and think of it from that perspective, you may not get the message behind it. Because there's always a message behind it. There's always something positive out of something negative. But it's your interpretation and understanding of what you are going through. And the key word is going through. It has not consumed you. It has not consumed you. So I am for it. Bring it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Dev. Steve.
Well, now I'm regretting going last because I got to follow everybody up like Ben and Dev and Chloe. Boy, that's some big shoes to fill.
Nice size
no, well, I think that I want to just echo what everybody else said, and say that everybody has brought some really great points and perspectives. And for myself, I've always tried to challenge myself, but the problem is most of the time stuff comes pretty easy to me, and I would probably say about the last year, having met you guys and been doing these things, I've been challenged more, and I've had my ideas challenged more, and my beliefs have been challenged more than they ever have been. And I've done the most amount of growing in the last, 6 months to a year. And I'm very grateful for that. because as I come out of my house and I go out into the real world, or I come and do these things, there's a sense of humble confidence. I don't know how better to describe it than that, where I'm confident in what I know, but I'm also humble or I try to be humble in the sense that what I know may not be the full truth or even part of the truth, and to be prepared to change the way that I think about things for a better way. And we can best do that by meeting people where they are and listening to people thoroughly and listening to their beliefs and their ideas. And I think something, resonating with what Chloe's discussing today, and I apologize, I can't remember her name. I'm really bad with names, so I'm going to just use that as a defense. But one thing that strikes me as pretty obvious to myself, but it seems like she knew the rules and she knew how to break them. And I think that's something that needs to be said is, in order to break the rules, you have to know what they are first. And this, of course, is in a positive way. Back then, a lot of things were set up so that she wouldn't be able to succeed, and she broke those rules. She did succeed. But it takes the cuts, it takes the bruises, it takes those experiences and those challenges that maybe sometimes it'll almost destroy us, it'll almost kill us, but we always come back stronger than we were before. And I think she exemplified that. She exemplified everything that we've talked about today. And she absolutely killed it. And that's why we're talking about her long after she's been gone. Her grandchildren and great-grandchildren are probably hanging out right now. Maybe, hopefully, they're listening to this. But I think that's evidence of the kind of strength and will that she had. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dev. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Ben. And I know Dev is going to say,
No,
"Oh, you
don't do
just
that.
asked us for your own."
Yeah, don't do that.
You have to.
Don't do that.
You
Don't
have
do
to
that.
see.
Exactly. Don't do that.
Dev. One of these days, I'm going to shock you. I'm not going to give any closing. I'm just going to end
Good.
the stream.
Thank you.
Anyhow, so as per the topic, we talked about Madame C. Actually, the headline of the topic was celebrating Black excellence, and we were featuring Madame C.J. Walker, who is sort of is I would say Chloe's hero, because Chloe is she's always mentioning Madame C.J. Walker, Madame C.J. Walker. So, and I think that her life was sort of inspirational in the sense that she was able to achieve so many things when it was legally sort of impossible for her to have done those things. When there were legal obstructions, there were legal obstacles to her becoming great or doing those things. But she was able to find a way around it. So it just shows something about the human spirit, that the human spirit will thrive in whatever situation it will find itself. Like I said earlier, at times we cannot control the hands we're dealt, but we can control how we interact with the hands that were dealt. You understand? So whatever situation we find ourselves in, we should try to make the most out of it, because if we don't make the most out of it, well, you're just going to keep being in a shitty position. But if there's anything that you can do that will make your life a teeny little bit better, then you should do it. It is worth pursuing. It is worth doing. You understand? So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this and keep on talking about this is we need to be able to show that Black people have done great things and they keep doing great things now. You understand? We need to be able to highlight that it isn't just about um, the oppression and the oppression and all that. No, 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 no. We need messages of positivity, and I think it is very good for the Black psyche. We need Black people to be able to understand that we can do a lot of good in the world because there are precedents to it. You get, even when times were tougher, Black people could still do those things. Yeah. So on the second part of the conversation, which is about taking risks and all that, I think it's also very, very necessary for one thing about you taking risks in your formative years is that it teaches you such that it's kind of a learning phase for you, because taking risks as a child, the how would I say, the risks and the returns, they are sort of kind of manageable. You understand? So you can learn with it. You can learn with it. You don't want to take your first risk when you are the CEO of a company. That would be disastrous. You get, you want to be able to have learned throughout your life process, and taking risks as a child sort of builds you up in that. It gives you an experience. Okay, uh, you know what to do and what not to do. That's why, in fact, in my country, some of the most creative people are people that come from the ghettos. Some of the most creative people in music, in entertainment, in so many other areas are people that came from ghettos where it was raw, it was grit. You get it. You don't find a lot of those creativity from people that live in gated communities and all that. No, those ones, they just keep speaking English and be looking posh. But people that are sort of making money now in my country are people who came from nothing. They came from absolutely nothing, and they're doing very well. They're doing phenomenally well. So that's it for the stream today. I won't be able to take any other person for now. I'm very sorry about that. So we're going to some other time we're going to let other people in, and then we're going to talk.
Charles, I
So
should I should suggest that you be a motivational speaker for Black people.
well, the thing is, I actually don't like motivational speeches and people who do those motivational stuff, because I think at times, I don't know. I don't know. But anyhow, good suggestion, Dev. But we'll look into it. So thank you guys for coming again, and have a great day. Good night
And thank you for having me,
from my
man.
end.
Blessings.
Yeah.
All
Bye.
right.
Thank you,
Blessings
Charles.
to
Thank you,
everybody.
Chloe.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
It's
Stay
great to talk.
blessed.
Bye, everyone. Bye.